Hi. I'm just pulling up my supplies list and then we'll get started. Okay, so today we're going to talk about supplies. If you didn't get a kit and you're getting supplies on your own, I'll just go through the suggested supplies list from the pattern, and then you can ask questions if you have any. So, hi Lisa. Okay, so I'm just going to start at the top of the supply list and work my way down. So the first thing on there is a needle. A DMC size 5 needle is my most commonly used needle. I have my little pin cushion from Alice and the Bear. But a size 5 needle has a smaller eye, but it's very sharp. It's a really good length. The other needle that I really like is a size 22 chenille needle. It's also fairly sharp, but it has a larger eye. The only thing is it's a little bit shorter, so the eye of that is hard to see. Hold on. So the eye on that, if you can see, it's like twice the size. I think that's hard to see, but anyways, the eye of it is a little larger, so it's a little easier to see, but it's also a little bit shorter, which I know it's not that big of a difference, just like that teeny tiny bit right there at the bottom, but it feels like a lot when I'm holding it in my hand. So those are the two needles I like best. Really, you can stitch with any needle. I would just try to avoid a thicker needle. It's just a little bit harder to not leave like a hole in your fabric, which I think it's kind of hard to tell, but this is like twice as thick as this. So sometimes I'll use that, like, oh yeah, you can kind of tell. Anyways, that's a thick needle. So that's gonna leave a little bit of a hole behind when you're doing embroidery, which we want to avoid. So, yes, you can use any needle, but some are better than others. Making sure that you have a sharp enough needle is important. Like a darning needle is not as sharp, so it's harder to get through your fabric. So let's talk about fabric. My top two choices are Kana cotton, which is like a nice, thick, tight weaved cotton, and linen. So this is a Kana cotton. You can still see through it back here in my window, but you can see it's pretty tightly woven. It's nice and thick. It has just the tiniest bit of stretch, but when you're doing a lot of stitching, it holds your stitches really nicely. This is a linen. You can see through it a little bit more. It's a looser weave. You can kind of see through it a little bit more. I'm gonna put them up against each other. Let's do this. Do you see how you can kind of see through this still and not as much through the cotton? The cotton's on the left. This one's the cotton, this one's the linen. You can kind of see like this is a tighter weave and this is a looser weave. This is still really nice. I use it all the time. I love linen. It's really, really easy to work with. It is the same as the cotton. It just has the tiniest bit of stretch. Sometimes when I use linen, I put like a muslin behind it, which is like a really thin cotton, just to kind of help stabilize the stitches. But other than that, I don't usually use two pieces. I know a lot of embroidery artists that use two pieces. They'll double their fabric in their hoop, which is one way to do it. I just don't love to. So you can also work with colored fabrics. This is a cotton, but it's very thin. It's like super thin. It's just like a cheap piece of cotton. So I don't usually stitch on this. I use this to like back my projects. I don't need something, it was like $2 a yard, like really cheap fabric. So just something to back it so that you have something kind of fun on the back. Okay, embroidery, thread, or floss, whatever you want to call it. DMC comes like this, has their name on the top and then the number on the bottom. Embroidery thread is 6-stranded. So if you look, it like comes apart. So you don't have to use like all 6 strands. You can pull these apart and just use 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever you want. So, and then with DMC, if you pull your thread from the number side, you're less likely to have knots. Like when you pull it out, you want it to pull out smoothly. If you pull from this end, you're more likely to have knots. Like it's pulling, this down here is like pulling from the inside of the skein of thread rather than like the outside. The outside, you're gonna get knots and stuff. So I'll say that again when we start stitching, but DMC. Anchor threads have started to show up a lot more in craft stores in the US. Anchor is now putting theirs on, what is this called? I've lost the word. Anyways, on these spools, it's a spool of thread, but it's the same thing. It's still 6-stranded. Like you can still pull it apart. It just comes on a spool rather than a bobbin. Yeah, that's another word. But their numbers are here, and then it's just like a spool of thread that has it has a little notch up here to like hold it tight. So it's the same thing. It's actually the same length as well, I'm pretty sure. Oh no, 10.9 yards. And this is, I want to say 8.7 yards. So 8 meters and 10 meters. So these are a little bit longer. They are a little bit pricier, but it's more thread. So kind of up to you what you want to do there. I always do DMC colors, but there is DMC to anchor conversion charts online. So if anchor is easier for you to get, that's totally an option. Or you can just pick your own colors. You don't have to use my suggested color palette. You can use whatever you want, but Anchor, DMC are the two favorites. I also sometimes use Cosmo thread, but it's very pricey for me. Our local quilting shop carries it, and it's like $2 for a skein of thread versus like 60 cents for DMC. So this is the brand Cosmo. They're great threads, like they are great to work with, but I feel like DMC is the same but for a portion of the price. So I don't use them very often. They do have they have a color that's between black and gray that I really, really, really love. So it's like a very light black, like an antiqued black. Anyways, I do like Cosmo occasionally, but I don't buy it very often. So, all right, embroidery hoops. This is my favorite part of supplies. Embroidery hoops are so fun. I have so many different kinds. So let's talk about them. The most common embroidery hoop you're gonna find is a bamboo hoop. Bamboo hoops are great. They're inexpensive. They are easy to find. They work great. If you can find them with like a screw on the end, that's what I like best because I can use my screwdriver to tighten them and loosen them. So they're a little bit easier to use. My only complaint about bamboo hoops is that they're not perfectly round. Like it looks round, but if you were to move this inner hoop, like from here over to here, it would have gaps in the hoop because it's not perfectly circular. It's a little bit oblong. I don't know if you can tell, but it's like a little bit wider here than it is here. So that's my only complaint about bamboo hoops. So what I usually do is I mark the center so that if it gets off, like if I'm working with it and it moves this centerpiece to the middle, then I know where it needs to go back. So I just go in and just do a little mark on the inner hoop. This is gonna get covered up, we don't care about that. So I just mark it a little bit so that I know that that is the top. That's what goes in the center. Then I don't have gaps in my hoop. Let me show you what I mean by that. Hold on, let me loosen this. So hoops, you're gonna loosen the hardware on the top, and then this inner hoop comes out. So if I were to move this center down here a little bit, then, oh, this one's actually pretty round. Let's see if we move it a little bit further. Okay, so do you see up here how there's this gap between the two? And it's like tight right here, but there's a gap right here. So then it's just not gonna hold your fabric as tight, which we want our fabric to be in our hoop very tight, so that we don't have a problem with like creating ripples and puckered fabric and stuff with our stitches. So having a tight hoop is important. So if you're using a bamboo hoop, I would just mark this top center so that you know where that is. And I usually mark it on both sides. So anyways, bamboo hoops. What I've been using a lot more recently is these beechwood hoops. I've never seen one without a screw. This one's a flathead screw instead of a Phillips head, but these, I haven't had a problem with them being like more round. I haven't had as many problems with like gaps. I still sometimes mark the center if I feel like it's not quite circular, but this one is. So anyways, I like these. The hardware is great. I really like that it's gold instead of silver. But it's just a little bit higher quality. These are closer to like $2 and these are closer to like $5. So they're still pretty budget friendly, but they are pricier compared to the bamboo. I think it's worth it. The quality is a lot better. So I've started putting these in kits rather than the bamboo, because they're higher quality. I like, there's a Frank A. Edmonds brand or Elbacy. I buy both, just depending on what I can find at what price. If I can get one or the other on sale, then that's what I grab, whatever they have. Both are great. I just buy whatever I can find. So there's also an option for oval hoops this is a beechwood hoop as well, but it's just oval and similar. The hardware has a Phillips head though, but it's like gold and really good quality. So these are kind of similar priced, a little bit more. They're closer like $5 to $7, but they're really cute. So decorative hoops, there is lots of options. This is one, just a hoop prop. So what you do is after you finish embroidering a piece, you finish it in a hoop, and then this just slides in. This is the wrong size. I need a smaller hoop. Anyways, you slide it behind this, so the elastic holds it in place, and then you have it like nicely framed, so the hoop is behind it, so you can't see it. And it's like that, and then you can just see your finished piece. So that's always kind of fun to use. This is one from Stitch Life Studio. Modern Hoopla makes another one that's just like for framing. You finish it in, you just finish it in a regular embroidery hoop, and then you put it in the back of the frame, you put it in the back of the frame, and it just sets in there. So those are fun and easy to use. There's also like these faux wood hoops. So these they have a hard plastic inner hoop, and then the outer hoop is flexible. So you can frame it this way, let's see, or this way. So a lot of them are oval, but they come round as well. I don't usually stitch in these because I can't get them, I don't feel like they're tight enough for me to embroider in. They just don't hold the fabric tight enough for me to feel comfortable. But they're really fun to finish in. I like to finish pieces in them. They're a little harder to work with. Once you get fabric between these two, it's a little bit harder to get this outer hoop like stretched around the inner hoop. So they're a little bit more difficult. It's possible, it's just a little harder. But that's a fun option. And then they have this cute hardware on top. This also comes out. It's just screwed in there. So it leaves a hole, but if you don't want that hardware in there, that does come out. You can also buy them without hardware, but I like the hardware. I think it's cute, especially if you're gonna hang something up. So that's an option. Last option would be one of these auburn hoops. I love auburn hoops. This is like solid wood, and then this inner hoop is the flexible part. So this leather strap just helps like pull this inner hoop out. So this is the flexible part, and then this is like solid wood. So the inside has like a groove that this sets in, and then they have their logo like burned into the back. But my only problem with these is that it is really, really hard to center in this. So usually if I'm going to finish in this, I stitch in it as well. Once my project goes in, I don't take it out. I stitch in it, I finish in it. That like, it's really hard to get it centered because this is so tight. So once it's in there, then I find the center and start working from there. So these are great. They look so beautiful. This can be stained. You can buy them stained or buy them plain. This one's a plain one, and then it can be stained, or I think it's really pretty, so I don't usually stain them, but that's an option as well. So many different sizes. I forgot about plastic hoops. Plastic hoops are another great option. I don't finish in these because I think that the colors are really obnoxious. People have been starting to make better colors. Like this is like teal. There's like bright orange. I've seen bright green. I've seen hot pink. So they're just a little bit obnoxious, but I really like stitching in these. I write the size on top. This is a 7-inch hoop. This one's an 8-inch hoop. Oh, you can't see that one very good. I need to rewrite it. But just so I can kind of remember. But these tighten and loosen really easily. And so I like to stitch in these because with this like groove, there's like a groove in here. And so it holds the fabric so tight, which I love. So sometimes I'll stitch in this and then move it to a beechwood hoop to frame it, just because I love how tight these hold. This one is Loops and Thread brand from Michaels. I think Hobby Lobby has started to make better plastic hoops as well. If you find plastic hoops that are like just flat against flat, don't do it. Don't buy it. It's not worth it. It's not going to hold your fabric. It's just, your fabric just slides between those two pieces. You want to find one that has the groove on there so that it will hold, you see that groove on the top? So that it will hold your plastic, or so it'll hold your fabric. I just got a plastic hoop for this stitch along. Yay! Yeah, I have a whole set like of different sizes. I have a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I maybe don't have a 9. But anyways, I think I have 2 6 inches, 7-inch, 8-inch. Just because I like to stitch in them, even if I'm not gonna finish in them, because I love how tight it holds my fabric. And then, because this I can just like tighten. It's so easy to tighten. Plus they also have like a screw end, so if I need it tighter, I can get out. Okay, Katie got hers from Hobby Lobby. I think Hobby Lobby has better colors. I've been seeing people with like the pale pink or like the pale, like the sage green, and they're so cute. So those might be fun to frame in. I want to say these were like $3, $4 maybe. I mean, they're not super cheap, but I don't frame in them. So I just like having them to stitch in. So anyways, plastic hoops, if you can find some with a groove, they're fabulous for stitching. And if it works for your project to have it in bright orange or teal or whatever, then by all means, finish in them as well if you want to. I wouldn't mind, orange is my least favorite color. Like, very rarely do I use orange. But like the teal is really pretty. I think that I could finish in that and be really happy with life. So that is another option. I know, so I also have some of these Q-snap frames. So it's just like a pipe, PVC pipe almost. And then this piece just like clips on. So you put your fabric on and then you put these over the fabric and it holds it on. I don't like these for embroidery. They don't hold my fabric tight enough for embroidery. So if you have one of these, like if you are a cross stitcher and you're moving to embroidery, I would not use this for embroidery. This is great for cross stitch. You don't have to have your fabric as tight for cross stitch. This is kind of a nightmare for embroidery, in my opinion. So I don't use these for embroidery, but I do like them for cross stitch. So I do have some, I just don't use them. So, okay. Moving on from hoops, we're gonna talk about scissors. You can really use any scissors you want. Whatever is gonna cut your thread, that's our main purpose to having scissors and cutting our fabric. But I love embroidery scissors. I own so many pairs of embroidery scissors. Like so many. I love them. I think they are so fun. So I have like fancy ones. I have less fancy ones. I mean, these are still embroidery scissors, but I also use them to cut fabric. But embroidery scissors are really sharp, and so they cut your thread like first time, every time. They are so great. So, but they come like can be so cute. They can be fancy. They can be plain. I also have a friend that gave me like some of these snips. I forget about them because I don't use them very often, but that's another option. You can also use, here's my cup of things. Like a seam ripper. These are great if you need to cut out portions of your work. But a seam ripper is like a sewing tool. So like right here on the inside is where you cut your thread. So this just like can slide under things if you're like cutting out portions of your work or something. But anyway, seam rippers. I have used fingernail clippers. If I'm in a pinch, like if I get to work and I forgot scissors, I always have fingernail clippers with me. So that is an option as well. Just something sharp that you can cut your threads with. Whatever. There's also like specialty like round thread cutters, and they have like little notches in them that are sharp that you can like cut your thread with. So you can get all kinds of fancy. I don't feel the need to do that at this point. Maybe one day I'll feel like collecting something else fun, but it's totally not necessary. So, okay, so a fabric pen, pencil, or marker. You need something to draw your pattern on. Let me grab. I have bought so many things. Okay, my favorite, my favorite thing are these Pilot Friction Fine Liner markers. So they have a really fine tip. They erase really nicely. I really like the blue, the black, and the purple. The red and the orange, the green, the pink, they don't erase as well. I like the dark colors. I do the black for the kits. You can buy them a couple at a time, or you can buy them in a box. I usually buy a box of them because I use them a lot. So that is fine for me. Okay, another option that I really, really like is, this is another heat erasable pen. They have cute little animals. There's like a little panda and a little pig. I have links if you want links, by the way. I have a highlight with supplies, but these are in there. These are so fun. It's another, like a really fine tip. These are either black or blue. I haven't had any problems with them erasing. They're heat erasable. So same with, where did I put that down? I don't know where my black one went. Here's a purple. So what happens is, this is like the eraser. These are erasable pens. And what this does is creates friction, which is heat, to erase the pen. So like if you were to draw on paper, draw a little thing and then erase it, like just scrub it with this, it just creates heat. So they erase with heat. So what I do is I draw on my fabric, and then when I'm done, I erase it by running a hot blow dryer over it. It's not perfect, so let me just say that. It does leave ghost lines, but as long as you're stitching over the top of it, you're not gonna notice. So you don't want to like draw all over your fabric and then expect that it's just gonna disappear and not be there. No, these leave ghost lines. They are like, you can see them. So yes, they do come with issues, but I still like them. Okay, so that's the same with these. They leave ghost lines, but it's also a very thin, it's a really fine tip, so it's not as big of an issue because it doesn't draw very much. So if you're drawing on a dark fabric, these gel pens, I don't use them very often, but I hear they're great. So I have some, but I don't use them very often. So there's like white gel pens, and they're heat erasable as well. I just don't stitch on dark fabric very often. If I do, I also have, not in that drawer, I haven't used it for a long time. I don't know where it is, but it's a mechanical pencil that instead of lead, it has chalk. So it's like it's a mechanical pencil with chalk instead of like graphite lead. So you can draw with white. The only problem is it's chalk. So if you're doing something that requires like precise lines, it's a little bit harder to use because it's chalk. And if you like rub your hands over it too many times, it's gonna fade or erase. It's also a little hard to get rid of. So I just don't use it very often. I mean, I don't like stitching on dark fabric, so I rarely use that anyways, but another option would be to use a water-soluble marking pencil. This one's white. This is a pencil, but you can also buy water-soluble markers. I don't like getting my embroidery wet after it's done. I feel like it just doesn't look as good. It gets a little messy. My stitches aren't as like tight and clean and smooth. So I generally don't, I mean, I haven't bought a water soluble anything for so long. My markers are gone. I don't use this, but I keep it around for stitchalongs. But it's just a white water soluble marker or water soluble pencil. So if you're not worried about getting your stuff wet, it's totally a great option. I know lots of people that use water soluble markers. I just personally don't. So, oh look. This is the lead for the chalk pencils. So it's just white, just a white lead. The brand is Fawns and Porter. Anyways, I don't use it hardly ever. So, what else? Oh, so if you don't want to buy something special, you can also just use a regular pencil. What I would suggest is using a mechanical pencil so that the lead is very thin, or use a newly sharpened, like regular pencil, so that your drawing tip is as small as possible. This is not gonna erase. Like, you're not gonna be able to erase this pencil line. So you wanna keep it very thin, and you want to make sure that you stay on your pattern and that you're stitching like over top of it, because it will leave like that dark line behind. So making sure that you draw very lightly, that you're not like drawing off your pattern at all. It works fine. Just know that it's more permanent. Don't use ballpoint. I mean, you can. I'm not saying that. But I would avoid ballpoint pens, Sharpies, Crayola markers, stuff like that. I would avoid all of that because it's permanent. So you're not going to be able to get that out. I think that's all. Heat erasable is always my number one go-to. So, okay, that is all from me. If you have questions about supplies, let me know. I also have a highlight on Instagram that has a link to all of my favorite supplies. But let me know if you have questions, and I'm happy to get you links or recommendations or whatever. But that's it for me. So I will be live again next week to go over prepping your hoop, which will be like transferring your pattern and getting your hoop ready to start stitching on the 30th. So let me know if you have questions before then, and I will see you next week. Bye.